There's a new king in town, and it's the new Fortuner, which is all set to rule the SUV segment and slip in where the last Fortuner left off. The Fortuner has been the de facto choice for premium SUV buyers, and for Toyota, that makes it pretty tough to take this to the next level. The challenge for Toyota is to retain the Fortuner's air of indestructibility and robustness, and at the same time make it sleeker, more modern and up to date. Let's take a closer look. What Toyota has done quite nicely is retain the Fortuner's DNA in a pretty modern avatar. It's not as square-jawed or straight-lined as before. In fact, the new Fortuner has a lot many more flowing lines. Take a look at these lights. These lights really very sleek. Lots of chrome around the fog light housings. And even if you look at the shoulder line, it's got a certain sleekness and a swoopiness to the roof, which really makes it pretty up to date. The Fortuner has a new cabin and an all-new dashboard, and what's really good is that the dashboard isn't carried over from the Innova Krista. Now, if you remember, the older Fortuner had the older Innova's dashboard carried forward, but over here it's a fresh design. It's a design which has got really solid looking elements and a lot of little premium touches as well. This little button, that really feels good. There are a lot of soft feel parts over here. Everything you touch has a nice soft feel to it. The wood finish is pretty good. But I have to say that quality is a bit of a mixed bag. The lower plastics, not as premium as we would have expected. But what is really disappointing is the roof. It's a woven roof. I would have preferred a knitted roof, which looks so much better. But what's surprising is that there's no sunroof in the new Fortuner, not even as an option. And the reason for that is that the rear aircon vents, they really cut into the space and you can't engineer one. There are some key features missing, but overall the Fortuner has quite an extensive equipment list. Now let's see how it does on space. It's quite a trek to get into the new Fortuner. In fact, this car is much higher than the older car. So for elderly people, getting in might be a problem. What's interesting is that there's a nice little recess over here, which is useful especially for children to get a bit of a grip to haul themselves in. Now this back seat is almost spot on. Everything seems just about right. The backrest angle, which you can easily adjust, that's helps towards comfort. Under thigh support really good. You don't sit in a very knees high position, which is pretty good because normally body on frame cars, they shove the floor up, which really pushes your legs up as well. There's pretty good legroom as well. A low window line, so looking out really looks good. So really it feels quite airy despite being quite a dark cabin. And there's a nice little recess to put my phone, but I do have a grouse. There's no USB port. In fact, the Fortuner just has one USB port for 7 passengers. In today's connected world, that's just not enough. Top marks to the middle row where many owners will spend most of the time. Well, let's check out the third row, which is for their kids. The ease with which you can tumble this seat forward, I think this is really one of the best features of the new Fortuner. And getting in is really not that difficult as a result. Put the headrest up. Well, as I said, this place is best for kids, but even for adults, it's not too bad at a pinch. And there's decent leg room. You can recline the seat if there's not too much luggage at the back and find a sort of comfy position. The seat, it's a little bit more generous, and you do get dedicated aircon vents. So really this place isn't as much of a punishment as I thought. Now you saw the middle row seat and the way it tumbled with just one tug of a lever. Well, the convenience carries forward to the third row as well. It's pretty easy to even fold the rear seats. Just a pull of a lever, and this goes back where you can store luggage quite neatly. So let's get the show on the road. But first, let's have a look at what's under the hood. Now this new Fortuner, it comes with 2 engine options, a 166 horsepower 2.7 litre petrol and a 177 2.8 diesel. Obviously, it's the diesel which we're going to focus on, and within the diesel there's a 6-speed manual and a 6-speed automatic. Now Toyota tell us that the automatic will form the bulk of the sales initially, and that's what we are in right now. It's the same 6-speed torque converter unit you get in the Innova, but you get the addition of paddle shifters in the Fortuner, so a little bit of a sporty element for a sports SUV. Now the old Fortuner came with 177 horsepower, so the new one doesn't have that much more than the older car, but what it does get is lots of torque, 450 Newton meters to be exact. So how does that translate to on the road? Well, initially there's a nice strong tug, it's pretty responsive off the line, and the Fortuner, for all its bulk, accelerates fairly briskly. Now this diesel engine is pretty smooth and refined when you're driving it in a relaxed manner, but push your foot down and it does make itself heard. And once you're past 3,500 RPM, the motor does get pretty noisy. So it's best to use the top end of the power band or rev the engine hard only if you have to. After having a good run in the automatic, it was time to jump into the manual. After the 6-speed auto, which did sap a bit of juice from the engine, the manual is just incredibly responsive. There's absolutely no turbo lag. Just tap the throttle and it just lunges forward. I've put it into power mode for optimum performance, and I can tell you that the Fortuner is just rushing up this hill like a mountain goat. There's this nice lusty surge of torque. There's a pretty strong mid-range, and I really don't need to downshift. I'm going up this hill in 3rd gear, and Fortuner just keeps pulling and pulling. For someone who enjoys driving, the 6-speed manual transmission Fortuner is the one to go for. The gear shift isn't feather light, but it's smooth enough, and above all, it's pretty accurate, so slotting in the gears is really quite easy. You can use the Fortuner in 3 modes: power, normal and eco. Whilst power is good for an energetic drive, you can slip into a leisurely pace with normal mode, or tighten your wallet with eco mode. Switching to normal mode, which is the default setting, does take a little edge of performance away, but it's still good enough. It's only when you switch to eco mode that you do find a significant drop in performance. But this mode is the one to use if you want to stretch that liter of diesel. But let's move back from saving bucks to the pleasure of driving. So whilst the automatic is the obvious choice if you want convenience and you're going to be driving a bit in the city, my pick really is the manual, purely because of how responsive the engine feels. And to further make driving the manual Fortuner that much more fun is this other mode called IMT. Now what IMT does, it really matches the revs when you shift down. So it's a bit like automatic heel and towing. So when you downshift, the throttle gives a little blip to match the revs. So it makes you feel like a rally driver, and the gear shifts are smoother too. After a quick spin in the manual, it was back to going clutchless with the automatic. The ride quality again has been hugely improved, and the new Fortuner is nowhere near as bumpy as the older one was. On uneven roads, there's still a bit of lumpiness and a fair bit of pitching and rolling that's typical of these high-riding, body-on-frame SUVs. But there's no doubt that the recalibrated suspension has resulted in a more settled ride. Where the Fortuner works best is on really bad sections, where it just seems to glide through larger holes and deeper ruts. In fact, the worse the surface gets, the more the Fortuner shines. But with all that bulk and weight, how does it handle? This is a big car, this is a very heavy car, and this is a very tall car, so the laws of physics don't really favor you. But I have to say that the Fortuner isn't as unwieldy or as cumbersome as I thought it would be in the hills. You can actually chuck it around quite easily. It gives you a lot of confidence. The steering, it's a hydraulic steering, so it does feel a little wooden, does feel a touch weighty, but really in actually a nice way. It doesn't have that artificialness of an EPS. It isn't absolutely razor sharp, but you don't expect it to be in such a heavy SUV. But there's a nice amount of feedback. It just tells you what the road is doing. And above all, you get a lot of confidence driving this car at high speeds, or frankly, even in corners. Now, a big change with the new Fortuner is that it comes with a selectable two-wheel drive option. Of course, there's four-wheel drive and four-wheel low, which can easily be selected by this knob over here. Now, the older Fortuner, it was a permanent four-wheel drive, but what Toyota found is that a lot of their customers really never needed four-wheel drive all the time. In fact, about 95% of them were fine with just two-wheel drive. So that's why this option over here, which gives you two-wheel drive, makes a lot of sense. Now, what that means is you don't have the frictional losses of the front wheels being constantly driven, and it's a smoother and a more fuel-efficient ride. So here it is, a new Fortuner, which is a vast improvement over the older car. It's bigger, it's plusher, it drives better, it's more refined, and packed with a lot more equipment. Now, the Fortuner hasn't always been the best value for money, and in the case of the new Fortuner, this car is expensive too. But what you do get is a certain peace of mind, and the fact that when you buy one, you just can't go wrong with it. If there's one SUV that can probably outlive its owners, it's this one.